The only reason Hamas has released any of the hostages to date, including the dead bodies of babies, is because of the kinetic military force exercised for 18 months by the young men and women of the IDF.
Mm.
Only military pressure has made Hamas give any of the hostages back. They would all still be sitting in underground tunnels and in the basements of Al Jazeera journalists and much more if there had been no military action in Gaza.
There are just some striking differences between the two sides that you elucidate in your book. I mean, one is that one side takes hostages, even young children and old women, and its community, the non-combatants receive these hostages not with looks of horror, but with open celebration. Right?
Yes.
It is completely intelligible. This from a cultural standpoint within Gaza. That this is exactly what you do. This is the good is on your side for stealing these infants and young children
Yes.
and old women and forcing them underground for years at a stretch. One side uses its own civilians as human shields. One side murders its civilians when they try to flee to safety. Yeah. And if you try to flip this, if you try to imagine the other side, that is the Israelis, doing any of these things, it is obviously unthinkable. And anyone who is standing in criticism of their behavior, I think, still wouldn't go so far as to imagine that the people of Tel Aviv are capable of using their own women and children as human shields, right? Or that they would celebrate that the IDF would want to seek to maximize civilian casualties on its own side. I mean, even that is not, as confused as people are, no one, it seems to me, is confused about that, and yet they don't see the relevance of these differences.
Lots of reasons. One is they don't want to. If you were supporting a side that turned out to have done October the 7th, and some people say to me, oh, no, the world's sympathies were with Israel. No, they weren't. No, some of the world's sympathies were briefly with Israel. But in London on the evening of the 7th, hundreds of people gathered in the streets of Knightsbridge to wave flares and celebrate the ongoing massacre. On the 8th of October, I relate in the book that I was in Times Square to see a pro-Hamas protest as the massacre was still going on. This started very early. And we get back to that strange collection of simultaneous thoughts that people can have. Hamas GoPros and records and Instagrams their atrocities. And their followers can, it's another one of these double moves, these jiu-jitsu moves, these they say simultaneously how thrilled they are about the atrocities, and also the atrocities didn't happen. And that then, the third move is the atrocities are actually carried out by the other side. You set your watch and you'll see it. Last year, there was a claim that IDF soldiers had gone into Gaza and were raping the women of Gaza. There are many reasons why this is completely implausible.
Yeah.
And not just implausible, but deeply offensive. But all these people who were relating this, repeating this smear of the Israeli Defense Forces, were all the people who were denying that Hamas had raped women on the 7th. There's a muppet of a journalist, not really a journalist, a sort of commentator, agitator in the UK, who passed around the libel that the IDF was raping women in Gaza, who, when he saw a version of the 43-minute atrocity video, came out of it and reviewed it by saying it was disappointing because you didn't actually see any women being raped, and therefore it seems unlikely any rapes occurred.
Yeah.
This has become, as you know, I call it Grossman's law now, after Vasily Grossman. This is this thing of tell me what you accuse the Jews of and I'll tell you what you're guilty of. Absolutely 100% application of this law. The side that says it's both good to kill babies and denies that they kill babies, then attack the IDF and IAF for killing babies. It's everywhere, this form of projection I suppose, which is one of the things it is. And it's deliberate desire to not recognize the difference between deliberately maximizing civilian casualties, as Hamas did on the 7th, and deliberately trying to minimize them, as the IDF has. If the IDF had wanted to carry out a genocide in Gaza, it could have done. They were accused of having a genocide in the Gaza since 2005, which is weird because the population doubled after 2005 up to 2023. But then it's not like consistency is particularly important, it seems, in this era. After all, the same people who say that there is a genocide in Gaza are the same people who say, why don't the Israelis realize that they are operating militarily in an area with a disproportionate number of people under the age of 21?
Here you have a line in your book, forgive me if I don't get it verbatim, but it was something like, how do you fight an army that wants to maximize the loss of life on its own side?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, this is,
yes.
It is, people don't, it seems to me, make contact with how just morally perverse that situation is, but two, what an insuperable obstacle it is to actually practically fighting a war so as to minimize the loss of civilian life.
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of Israeli soldiers have been killed in the last 18 months because they are going methodically and in exceptionally dangerous situations, house to house, in areas of Gaza that are meant to have been cleared of everyone but Hamas fighters. Hundreds and hundreds of young Israeli men, primarily, have been killed by, instead of carpet bombing an area, going assiduously through it at enormous personal risk. They have every soldier you speak to has the same stories of, for instance, people coming out of a civilian area with their hands in the air, and then from their midst, a group of Hamas terrorists come dressed exactly the same as the civilians and start firing at the soldiers, in the knowledge that the soldiers either have to just receive the incoming fire and lose their own lives, or they have to fire back and risk killing some of the civilians that Hamas is so gleefully sprung out among. None of this is just. All of this is what every soldier has faced for the last 18 months, every single one. And Hamas's leadership say, there was an interview on Al Arabiya the other month with one of the remaining leaders of Hamas, who was asked, if the Israeli airstrikes from the air that you describe are so devastating, why don't you allow the citizens of Gaza to shelter in your very extensive tunnel system? And his reply was, because the tunnel system is not for the civilians of Gaza. The tunnels are for our rockets and ammunition and for our fighters. And asked who should build shelters for the citizens of Gaza, he said the international community. That's their responsibility, the international community. But
right. They're the same community that gave them billions and billions of dollars to build those tunnels, right, effectively over 18 years.
And I have a genuine offer I'll put out there. I can't attach a cash prize this time, but it is a completely sincere offer to anyone listening to pick me up on the following challenge. Your listenership, I'm sure, Sam, is intelligent enough to understand what it is to extrapolate out civilian or other casualties by ratio of population. Not everyone gets me on this. But, of course, Israel is a country of 9 million people. America is a country of, what, 340 million people. Nobody knows how many people there are in the UK, so it doesn't work there. But
we soon won't know how many people are in America, given all the doging. But
and again, just preempting any of the morons who want to claim that I'm saying that a Jewish life is worth 10 American lives or anything like that. No, It's extrapolating out from population. So if October the 7th had happened in America by proportion of population, it would have been 44,000 Americans murdered and burned alive in their homes in one day, and another 10,000 Americans taken hostage. So my challenge is, whether in Gaza with 1,200 civilians in Israel murdered and 250 taken hostage. And the two stated war aims of the Israeli government, the return of all the hostages and the destruction or capture of all of Hamas's leadership and fighting brigades. Whether it's in the case of Israel trying to carry out this operation of rescue and so on in Gaza, or whether it would be how America would get back 10,000 hostages in an equally built-up, intensely booby-trapped terrain. If anyone watching has a battle plan for how to do that, send it to me, and I will send it to everybody I know in Israel, because I'm sure that if there is a military genius watching and listening who knows how you would carry out that operation with no civilian casualties on the side of the Gazans and minimal to no casualties on the side of the IDF, I can assure anyone watching, I and many others would be all ears. But I hear no such thing. I hear no such thing. The best I've had, I think it came up in that Rogan debate, the best I've heard is the hostages that have been released by getting around a table and negotiating. Horse shit, said by people who don't know what they're talking about. The only reason Hamas has released any of the hostages to date, including the dead bodies of babies, is because of the kinetic military force exercised for 18 months by the young men and women of the IDF. Only military pressure has made Hamas give any of the hostages back. They would all still be sitting in underground tunnels and in the basements of Al Jazeera journalists and much more if there had been no military action in Gaza. Sinwar would still be alive if the IDF had not painstakingly fought in Gaza for a year. People simply do not understand this. And when they say things like, but why don't the Israelis just get around the table with Hamas? I'm afraid you completely demonstrate you know nothing about Hamas.